I call it the one and done. And what we're standing in right now, we're standing in a property that, in my opinion, is the perfect model for a one and done deal. And I'll go over what I mean by that in the workshop, or during the slides. Today we have an agenda, so if this is too hard for see, don't worry about it. I will be giving every one of you a copy of my new book, which is just hasn't even been launched yet, but a lot of this stuff will be in the book, but also we will give you some of these slides after the fact through email, so don't be too concerned about not being able to read it all, okay? We are encouraging questions, so if you have any questions, please ask. Our speakers today is myself. We have Jeff Reed, who's a contractor, and we have Adam, who's our architect. We also have some other people in the crowd who are also, I guess I call them part of our team. We have a designer here today, we have an underpinner today, and maybe some other people that I'm not aware of yet. Yeah. So, my introduction is this. A lot of times, actually, this happens way too often. It actually even happened on Facebook the other day. I put up, all you need is one property and you can be done. And I got a comment, Andre, I think you need more than one property. It's like, you know what, okay, obviously it depends on your end goal. That's for sure. But in my opinion, if you wanted to earn close to $1 million of profit in 10 years, or if you want to wait even more, 15 years, you'll earn, you know, $1.5 to $2 million of profit with just one property. And this property that we're standing in is that example, and I will show you why. That's the cover of my book. Wow. So, when I talk about a one and done deal, all three of these, location, tenant profile, and your team, have to work together like an orchestra. I truly mean that. If you have all three of these, you can have a phenomenal, solid anchor property that will take you to retirement. And we're going to talk about all three of these rules. So rule number one is investing in the right location. I know we're in the beaches, and this is a location that I believe in, that I invest my own money in. And you can find any areas in Toronto, but I'm going to be referring to the beaches. And when I say Toronto beaches, don't just think it's the beaches. It includes Leslieville, it includes Danforth, it includes East York. But when I refer to Toronto beaches, that's what I'm referring to, all of those areas. So, the economic fundamentals of the Toronto beaches, and Toronto in general. So, employment. Employment is huge. So, we are the closest green neighborhood to the financial district, which in my opinion is the hub of Canada, the employment hub of Canada. We have transportation, major highways, we have GO Train, we have subways, we have streetcars, and the future relief line that's coming up. And that's something that I'll be talking to you about as well, which I can actually show you. So this is the relief line that is slated to be done in approximately 10 years. So I wanted to bring this up right now because this has a huge impact and will have a big ripple effect out into Leslieville beaches and the surrounding area. And these are the approved stations, so it goes from Osgood, Queen, Sherbourne, Sumac, Broadview, Carla, Gerrard, and Papen Danforth. The purpose of the relief line is to actually to relieve the actual congestion from Yonge and Bloor. So they decide to cut through, and if you get a property within 800 meters, which is what the statistics show and are proven that if you get something within 800 meters of a station, your property value and rental value will actually be about 15% higher than outside of the 800 meter range. Now, along the Danforth line, I just want to make a note of this. Along the Danforth subway line, the subway is actually 9 meters below ground. So when you're on a street like Strathmore, for example, which is right above the subway, you'll feel vibrations every 5 to 10 minutes. And it's actually quite unattractive. I would not recommend any one of my clients to buy on that street for the simple reason of people are going to be always like, oh, okay, no, forget it. Like, this is too much pushback. The relief line is slated to be built 18 to 20 meters below ground, which will actually give a lot more of a sound buffer. And they're using new technology called a floating slab that employs rubber and so that's gonna actually make it even more soundproof. Population, there's a new growing demographic. It's the echo boomers, which is AKA the millennials, and they are a big part of the population growth in this area. The beaches is a place that, okay, when you find an area, not just beaches, but I'm referring to the beaches, you need to find an area that people take pride in. People want to live there, not just today, tomorrow, and 25 years from now. Guys, you wanna buy in a location that you would live in, that you want to live in, that you literally can see yourself living there in 25 years from now. Not some small town outside of Toronto where it's more affordable, that you can get maybe a little bit more cash flow, but no one's gonna wanna live there because it's a retirement home, it's just a community area, that's all it is. You know, so in my opinion, you gotta invest for quality, not just for affordability. They're competing in this area. They strive to buy in this area. They actually want to live in the Toronto beaches. They're willing to pay a premium to live here, and I'll show you why. We're close to the top hospitals in the country, and some may even argue the world. So, and I say this with confidence because I know several people who actually took retirement. They went up to cottage country because that's where they wanted to retire, and soon after that they came back. Why? Because they were beside the top hospitals, and they didn't want to commute 2.5 hours. But they're retirement, so they need more access to hospitals. That's what happened, unfortunately. And we have high-ranking public schools, which is very important for people who care about their children's education, and they're actually willing to pay a premium for that. The relief line. So there's some upcoming developments that I actually do want to emphasize on. The one is the relief line, which we just talked about, and it'll slated about 10 years from now. And I want to go back to that for a second because it's that important. Broadview Station is going to be, which is right here, Broadview Station is going to be in the middle of the East Harbour development, which I'm going to be showing you soon. That is a station that is going to have some major impact. Carla and Gerrard. Gerrard is where Gerrard Square is. It's kind of run down right now, and it's kind of crummy, so it's an area that is definitely going to be up and coming. So if you can have a strong stomach, you can stomach it for the next 10 years, that would be an area that I would definitely recommend. The Waterfront redevelopment. This is all the colored area. This is an ongoing project. It's the largest redevelopment project in North America, waterfront redevelopment project, and it's the largest revitalization project in the world. Waterfront, yes. It's about almost 2,000 acres. And it's about four times the size of Monaco, and it's expected to be completed within 25 years. But all these areas are right now industrial lands, floodplain lands, just nasty stuff. It's not even attractive at all. This is going to be, you know, another one of those redevelopments that's worth looking into more. Then we have the Sidewalk Labs, which is, have you guys heard of that? Google is trying to figure out how to make this a much more tech-friendly urban city to live in, and they're going to use this as a sort of not a guinea pig, but to how to actually help other cities all around the world to become more a new kind of urban community. Now, the people that are doing this, they actually were responsible for revitalizing after 9/11. So that's just goes to show you who's actually working on our waterfront as well. Dan Doctoroff is the CEO of this, and their head office is on Lakeshore near Sherbourne. East Harbour Development is what I was referring to. The highlighted portion is where it's going to be. That's what it looks like right now. And that's the Gardner, and then into the DVP. This is Eastern. So Eastern, between Eastern and Queen, and Broadview, and I forgot the Eastern Street. So these are all the communities, and this is East Harbour. It's actually become a new district. So that new subway station I was telling you about is going to be right here. This East Harbour development is going to create anywhere from 50,000 to 70,000 to 70,000 jobs. It's going to be a mixture of office, retail sites, cultural and public spaces, entertainment, parks and restaurants, all within a walkable and bikeable environment. I'm very actually pumped about this. It's an area that, again, there's just industrial stuff there, not much is happening, but this is going to happen, and having that transit hub is just going to make it that much more attractive. Any questions about this? Are you guys familiar with this project that's happening? Any other information that you guys know about that you'd like to share? East Harbour Development. So that's the depiction of what it's supposed to look like, this section right here. So they're considering it like very large. So, and that's why I love the Toronto beaches. All those developments that are happening, living there feels like you're living by the lake in the cottage country, but with everything only steps to your front door. And you have grocery stores, local restaurants, mom and pop shops. There's no like big box stores like Walmart right along Queen or anything. So you actually have local shops. It's a safe and clean and beautiful community. All these factors create high demand. These are the reasons why people want to live there. Supply is very competitive. They're not building any more houses there. Building condos, but that's a completely different market, and I'm not worried about that. I'm not encouraging condo investment. I'm encouraging housing, like houses. And Toronto, as it continues to grow into a world-class city. So that's location. So I'm going through this a little bit quick, but if you have any questions, let me know. Tenant profiles is number 2, the rule number 2. You want to have tenants willing and able to pay premium for high quality housing. And you can go out there and provide a house that has the average sort of condition, your typical, stereotypical tenant apartment. That's not what I'm referring to when I'm speaking about this. I'm referring to high-end or above average housing. And when we do put up an ad, and we just did an ad up for Adrian here, for his house on the beach, and I just did one in the basement, and we had a large volume of applications. It's not like we go and you're sitting and waiting, you're hoping for tenants to actually apply. You're actually getting a ton of applications. One basement apartment I just rented out was over 100 applications. And no kidding, it's not just the volume of applications, it's the actual percentage of qualified applicants that are actually applying. 80% has been the average. So out of 10, 8 of them will be actually qualified. And who would you like to pick? That's the challenge we were faced with. Now that's for a basement apartment. Now if you're starting to advertise for a $5,000 apartment, you might not get 100 applications, you'll get less. So they're coming here for the prestige of the location, they're coming here for the beach lifestyle and close access to everything in Toronto. So some of the tenant profiles that we've been getting, and this is literally recent, U of T professors, lawyers, VPs of large companies, designers, young executives. I've had project managers. I've had people work for the TTC. I've had managers. It's very interesting what kind of tenant profiles we're getting. And you're probably wondering, well, why are these people renting? And these people are, some of them had over $800,000 salaries, annual salaries. Some of them, the recent one was a $600,000 salary. Then there's $300,000 salaries, $150,000. Very rare do we get something that's below $60,000. And I'm talking about for basement apartments too. So why are they renting? Well, some of the examples. U of T professor, he actually wanted to live in an area because his family and friends were there. He couldn't buy it. He's like, you know what, I'd rather just rent. And in a couple of years, I'll figure out whether I want to stay here or go buy something then. Lawyers, he was coming from Texas. He was coming here because his wife was studying at U of T. They stayed here for a year and a half while she was doing her PhD. Does VP, well, divorce. Even though they were making 800,000 plus, it was divorce. They wanted to live close to where their children would live, and they didn't want to have anything to do with home ownership. Designers, they just didn't care to buy. They didn't care to buy. They just, you know what, I want to live in a quality apartment by the water and leave me alone. That's all. I'll rent, I'll pay for it too. Young executives, they're starting out, they're coming from the condo lifestyle or from their parents. They want to move into a 2-bedroom apartment in a good location where all that stuff is around them in close proximity to work. So that's why people rent. And you're going to find them even more so now. I think I even wrote it down. Yeah, we have a slowing tenant turnover rate. So because of the lack of supply, not only in purchasing properties, but even renting properties, people are not moving from their places. So there's less turnover. That means there's much more demand and people are competing. There's actually multiple offers in finding tenant, in leasing as well. And that means less turnover costs, which is a great thing for you guys. According to CMHC, Toronto rental vacancy rate is 1.1% compared to Canada's average of 2.4%. According to BNN Bloomberg, lots of tech-related growth in Toronto, which equals well-paying jobs. So some of the most recent things that were posted was Instacart. They're having a new head office here. They've partnered up with Walmart for same-day grocery delivery. They're creating about 200 jobs. Uber, they're having a new engineering hub in downtown Toronto. Pinterest, their new head office. Microsoft is having a new head office. Netflix and Amazon, not the whole Amazon headquarters, but their existing head office, they're just relocating and they're creating more jobs as well. The job market will continue to put pressure on the rental housing market, but that job market is going to continue to fuel potential buyers because people still want to buy. It's not like just no one else is buying. People will still buy. But because there's such lack of supply and because prices are going up, it is harder to buy. But what is happening is there's going to be a big transfer of wealth over the next decade. And that transfer of wealth is going to be coming from the baby boomers. And unfortunately, as they get older, they will start passing. And as they start passing, they will start giving their free and clear properties over to their children. And their children will have this money that they can do what they want with, which is, you know, they can be buying and afford property. So there is a massive actually wealth transfer happening. Rule number 3, to find your dream team. And I can't stress this enough, and I know everything I'm saying is stress this enough, but really I'm trying to give you guys the real meat and potatoes here. I'm not going through fluff, I'm really trying to give you guys the real stuff. And when you want to create something like this that we're standing in, can you do it alone?
No.
You know, maybe you can. I'm not going to say you can't, but I really don't recommend it. These are there's 12 people, 12 different team members here that have listed, and there's more. But some of them are your real estate agent. They should be local. They should understand not just the areas, but the streets, what the rental values are, what the property values are, who your buyers are, who your sellers will be, what actually gets you value, what doesn't. Your architect, we have Adam, they don't just have to be a regular architect, they have to understand how to design and create a triplex.
Which is difficult, guys. I will say that a lot of architects will say that they know how to create a triplex, but you got to think about access, where they're coming from and whatnot, and a lot of contractors, a lot of people out there think that they can, you know, create triplexes, and what really happens is a little bit different. A lot of people, even some of the builders, don't know how to build a triplex.
Yeah, I agree. A planner can actually complement an architect, which they can help you determine the best and highest and best use for that property. A mortgage broker who can position you to not just purchase this property, but can help you purchase your next 2, 3, 4, 5. Lawyers who actually understand these and who know and understand what to search for when it's an income property. Your insurance broker and how to insure the property as an income property. I'm going to be skimming through this, but there's a lot more detailed about these. So if you want to know, raise your hand. Let me know. Accountant, renovation team. This is, for example, Jeff. You're not solo. You're not a lone guy. You have a whole team beneath you and beside you that help you create this project. So when I say a renovation team, it's not just Jeff Reed. It's Jeff and his entire trades. It's your back-end team that people don't even see. Then your property manager, who's going to find the tenants for you? Who's going to manage it for you? In Toronto, typically, I'll be honest with you, it's done by the owner. Because most people actually live in Toronto, so they're okay with managing themselves. But for finding tenants, it's not that common for people to find them, but you can. Designers. There's some pictures I'm going to show you here that it's not just thought up by the owner. There's designers who actually do this, and there's a designer in the room that I'll point out once those pictures come up, because she's the one who designed it. I have an asterisk beside fellow investors, because fellow investors are probably the people that you will learn from the most. People like who are in this room. I can do so much, Jeff can only do so much, Adam can only do so much, but when you start talking to people who actually are, Andre is the guy who owns this place. He's the guy that knows everything about this place, so talk to him. See what he can help you with. These are the people that can help you the most. And a coach. There's actually, my coach is here, Oliver. Why is it important to have a coach? Because for me, it was because I was off track. I wanted to buy 35 properties and do it all in 5 years and get sick and then get divorced and not be happy.
Good goals.
But your coach can get you back on track, and it's not just for that. It's for other things as well. It really gives you clarity and focus, so you're not all over the place. So you actually can start focusing on what is really important and why you are actually doing this, not because you want to create an empire and be rich. When it comes to creating one of these properties, this is in my previous book. I have the 5 deal structures. There's a silver platter deal where everything is turnkey. You literally take the keys from someone and you start collecting the rent. Then there's rent ready, there's cosmetic touch-ups, there's the gut renovation strategy, and there's the major change strategy. So to try to find something that's a silver package deal where you get the keys and you just literally start collecting rent, it's so rare to find those, and I'll tell you how rare it is. I did a case study where it was about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. I found out there was just over 2,000 properties that were sold in all of East York, Leslieville, and the Beaches. Of those 2,000 homes, approximately 77 of them were triplexes, meaning they had 3 kitchens in them. Of those 77, 9 of them were legal. Of those 9, 1 of them actually had tenants and was cash flowing. In a whole year. I'm not saying you can't find them, but that was just a case study that I did. So if you're looking for that, you're going to be waiting a very long time and you're going to be competing. So it's, in my opinion, it's not worth it. So the best place to actually, you could find them is off market. And I've helped hundreds of investors and they've done this sort of thing, so I could approach them if they decide that they want to sell. But that's honestly another way that you can do it off market. To find a silver platter on the market, good luck. So the real opportunity, tremendous opportunity, is in these 2 sections, the gut renovation and the major change way, and that's how you can create one of these properties. You get a single family home, or it's already 2 kitchens or 3 kitchens, doesn't matter, but then you actually create it. You just have to make sure you find the right location, the one that you believe that it can happen in. You get your architect to determine if it's possible, and then you get your contractor to give you an idea of what it's going to cost you, and then you go full out. But creating it is the way to do it. And I know it's a lot more complicated than that, but it's as simple as that as well. Creating it is the way to go. Oh, that's another thing. Because there's such a lack of supply, if you ever wanted to actually create these and actually sell it afterwards, like that's a really good strategy too. And I know that's not your intention here, but imagine this thing came on the market and it was fully rented, fully legal, and stunning. Like that's value. And there's such a lack of supply, and people would want to jump all over this. So now once you have found the right property, the next step is planning the renovation. So when we talk about renovations, I talk about the cost of them and the value that those renovations will actually bring you. So return on investment is measured in two ways. The tangible way, which is, there's cash flow, there's equity, you can actually measure those. But then there's the intangible ways. And what I mean by that is, you attract good tenants. They'll actually let you sleep at night. They will give you peace of mind. They will be good tenants. They will actually stay longer. There will be less turnover. So this is the intangible part that cannot be measured, but it is measured, through peace of mind. So renovations, I believe, that have the most emotional impact and the biggest ROI, return on investment. And when I talk about emotional impact, this is something that I want to say, because many investors out there, and I'm not just saying outside of Toronto, just I've heard it outside of Toronto, it's all about numbers. All about numbers. You go there, what's the yield? Oh yeah, what's the ROI? Oh, that's not good. What's the cash flow? No, not. Okay, it's not all about numbers. And I'm passionate about this because when you come to Toronto in a location that is so damn hot and awesome, you have to look at it from an emotional standpoint. You have to look at it as because it's so in demand and such a lack of supply, you have to go for other people's emotions. You have to give them what they want and what they're willing to pay a premium for. And what is that? You have to figure that out. So some of these things that I've listed here are those things that people are willing to pay a premium for. I'll give this to you guys in case you guys can't read it. But some of the things that I will show you in the pictures to come actually offer a much larger return on investment than what you've put into it. So if it costs you 50 grand, it's actually going to perhaps give you 100 grand in return. And that would be an example of underpinning, and it's not even in here. So like underpinning is massive in this location, and we have an underpinner here, and she's been phenomenal. Underpinning, although it could cost anywhere from 60 to 100 grand, will actually, in my opinion, double that in its ROI. So emotions, please think of it. It actually is important from a rental perspective and for your future buyers. What do they want? And some of the things that I want to mention are exposed brick and beam. You've probably heard that before, but let me go through the pictures. This is a picture of our good friend Adrian. His triplex that we just finished up and rented out right now. This is a kitchen that I'm not suggesting that you put in all your properties. Okay, this was a high-end triplex, and this was a 2-bedroom main floor apartment. And this would actually be sort of similar to what we're going to be doing down on the main floor here. But this is really colorful. This is really popping. I love it. Adrian, did you design this?
No.
Okay, so Gabby, she's the designer who actually helped you design it, right? So if you guys want, she'll have, I don't know if you have your business cards, but if you do, then.
I have.
Yes, okay. This is someone that you could get as part of your team who will actually make this happen. Yeah, could you do it on your own? Maybe. I'm not discounting that, but this is the purpose of having your own team. Actually, I do want to mention in this list. Oh, it's not here. Okay, sorry, next list. En-suite laundry. This is just, I want to show you what it could look like. Even though it's exposed, this is your hallway. It doesn't have to be behind closed doors. If it looks this attractive, why not keep it there? And it's so rare to have a sink, a laundry sink. That was just a bonus. I'm not saying you have to do that, but that's just a bonus. This is your spa-like bathroom. I don't have the sinks in here, but that was probably even better. But the rain shower head, the glass walls, the lights, the way how warm it feels, the heated floors that they have. Here, separate entrances. When you're charging premium rents, people don't want to share. And that goes with laundry too. And actually, I'll even go back to the laundry. You want to charge $3,500 for a 2-bedroom apartment or for a 3-bedroom apartment? People are not going to pay or even consider it if they have to go to a laundromat. Or if they have to go and share laundry with the basement tenant. You have to put in laundry. No ifs, ands, or buts, that's it. You have to put in your kitchen, do it. You have to have your own laundry. separate entrances. This entrance down here was not there when this house was purchased. They actually dug it down. That's the basement entrance, main floor entrance, and the upstairs entrance is through the front. So separate entrances is key because you want them to have their own private space. They want to be able to feel that it's their own home. This is a basement apartment. This is also designer built. And I'm going to mention the floors. These are actually vinyl floors. They look like hardwood. They're actually stunning. You can't even tell the difference. This island is massive. The light fixtures, that's a 10-foot island. And storage. So I did have listed on here storage. Even though it's hard to actually create storage in these small apartments, but here they created them all underneath the island. Those are all cabinets that are usable. And although you can't put a Christmas tree under there or something that's larger, but at least it offers additional storage that people wouldn't have had otherwise. It's bright, it's underpinned, the windows are extra large, so there's more natural light in there as well. These are some light fixture examples that I've pulled together that I think make a place pop. And I want to emphasize light fixtures because this is where the kitchen's going to be, right, Andre? And the island's going to be here. Now, if you have two pendants coming down, if you have a dining room that you have a larger, light fixture, dining room light fixture, I've seen it before. I've done open houses. I've gone through open houses. I see people's reactions when it comes to light fixtures. They walk in, oh, isn't that awesome? And they actually get emotionally attached to it. And we've even done tours, and we've seen like some of these light fixtures, and they're just, and especially in the loft style places, the light fixtures are the main features in the house, and they're like, boom, and it just makes a big impact. Would you agree? Yeah. Flooring. We have polished concrete floors. We have hardwood floors, laminate floors, vinyl floors. As long as it looks and feels good and it's quality. Polished concrete floors. Some people might say it's too cold. Are you putting heat on these floors downstairs? In the basement, yeah. So you probably might have some experience with polished concrete floors, and I know Jeff does too. Yeah. But those, once they look smooth, they're polished, and if you heat them, you want to take off your socks, you just want to walk barefoot. We rented it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. If you're doing heated floors, and you use the polished concrete, you don't even realize that it's cold. Like, you never ever feel it. You actually want to take off your socks and walk barefoot. My parents have it throughout their whole house. They have polished concrete in the basement, and I get yelled at because I'm Portuguese and you're always supposed to have socks on. But I definitely, every time I'm there, I take off my socks. It's the first thing I do, and I walk around barefoot in the house all the time.
What about the bills?
Sorry?
What about the bills?
It's water, so it's not electrical. You're actually saving in the long run because it's actually done through most of the time we use Ray Hall system, which is it's a PEX pipe that's ran through and it's just circulating. So you do have to have it on a separate boiler system, but it actually is not electric. So it's really, your electricity is never going to go up. Yeah.
We just rented out Adrian's basement, which was the one that's right here. We showed this young executive couple. They walk in, and the first thing they said, well, we were kind of hesitant on the basement apartment. As soon as they walked in, they was like, this is the basement? Like, the ceilings were this high, and they're like, why are my feet so warm? and they honestly just fell in love. They didn't even see the rest of the place. It was like, okay, so can you send me the application? Not even lying to you guys. It was hilarious. But you captured their emotions. You captured what they want, what they love, and what they're willing to pay a premium for. So these are actually relevant. Adding natural light. I know it's not always easy to do this, but when there are scenarios that you can do it, skylights, opening up walls, making it more open concept, digging down window wells to create more natural light for the basements, which adds a lot of natural light for these basements that seem to be more dungeon. This is the bungalow you and I did. So this was a flip property that we did, but what I wanted to show you here is the light fixture was, did you make that?
Yeah. Yeah, the plumber and I.
Okay, so it's made out of gas pipe, but then what kind of bulbs are those again? Epsom?
Edison bulbs.
Edison
yeah.
bulbs. And we did cathedral ceilings, you did the wood beams, I call these cottage floors. This is in East York, but we called it, on the front of the house, we actually, where it says, you know, the address, we called it the cottage. And people fell in love with it. You walk in, they're like, oh my goodness, you step into the front hallway and you see that all the way to the end, and you see those triangular windows on the front here, in the back, it just adds more natural light. And we had more skylights, an exposed brick, barnwood doors, we had a sub-zero fridge, you know, not brand new, it was dent and something, scratch and dent, but it was in the back, so it doesn't show anything.
Mhm.
So being efficient with your spending, yet smart about it as well. And staging is key, which this is staged. So all these things that I showed you, we have control over. We have control over how much height we want to have, what open concept we want to have, how much rooms we want. We have control over that list of renovations that I just showed you. But there's some things that we don't have control over that still have a direct impact on the rental values and property values. And some of those things are parking. I know some people say that you can create parking, but it's rare, and I'd say that's the exception, not the rule. Parking will add a lot of value. Schools, being around a good a good high-ranking school. Private outdoor space. So I guess I can go in more detail, but I think you guys understand why it's good to be in a good school district. Private outdoor space. So if you're cooked up in a condo that doesn't have a balcony, or even if it does have a balcony, you want to get out. You need to get out. You need to feel like you want to get out and go on grass, do a barbecue or something, and just walk out into the front lawn or something. Having or giving people their private outdoor space will add to their desire to want it, and they're willing to pay more for it. Views from your unit. You can't really change that because you don't know, what are you looking at, a brick wall, or are you looking at a ravine, at the water? So you don't have much control over that, so think of that when you are buying this. You know, what are you actually going to be, what are your tenants going to be viewing when they're looking out the window? Storage space, I did talk about that. And access to transportation and amenities. So how close are you to the subway? How close are you to streetcars? Can they go directly to Union Station? Are they easy access to their work and groceries and so forth? The real life example of a one and done deal. These numbers are reflective of this property. They're not entirely 100% accurate because it's obviously still undergoing renovations. So I do have in here an estimated reappraisal value. And again, it's estimated. It could eventually be more, it could be less, but this is my estimate. So this was a single family, semi-detached single family home that needed to be underpinned. The back half had to almost be rebuilt. It was gutted to the bones, and they're creating a legal triplex. A comment on that picture, that is the typical beach house that you'd find south of Queen Street, and these are the types of houses that I actually love, and it would be another great ideal beach property or one and done deal. That's why I put it there. But this property, here are some of the numbers that I can share with you. It's in my book, so you'll see this. So this house was purchased for $956. There was 20% down payment, and after all the land transfer taxes, the closing fees, we estimated a renovation budget of about $450,000, plus or minus, okay? And it will take around 10 to 12 months to complete, and the total capital, including renovations and all closing costs and down payment, will be about $750,000 that you will need. Don't everyone fall over at once. That's a different workshop. How you're gonna get that money is a different workshop. This is why I say it's one and you're done, because it is a lot. Now, once this is done and rented out and it's reappraised, the estimated value will be for a reappraisal 1.5. Could it sell for more? Very, very likely.
Yes.
But you have to be a little bit more conservative when you do estimate this stuff, when you're buying it, and you want to just make sure that you're basing it on conservative numbers versus more optimistic numbers. So once you reappraise it at 1.5, you get back in your pocket 435,000, but what's left in the property is 317,000. Does it make sense to everyone what I mean by that? After refinancing, and you put in 750 to do everything, and then you get back some money, but what's left in the property of your own money is 317,000. Okay, if anyone has confusion on that, let me know. Then what we're estimating. Sorry?
Maybe go over it. I bet you there's a lot of people that don't put their hand up.
Please, honestly, tell me if you guys don't understand. Okay.
How does the mortgage portion work when you're paying a mortgage monthly?
You came from BC, didn't you? Just for this workshop, this guy came from BC. Just letting you know. No, not true. Go ahead. What was that?
You have a mortgage portion once you refinance your monthly payments have a
Yes. So your monthly payments will increase, and I'll show that right here. So basically, your new mortgage is 1.2 million, because your appraised value is 1.5, 80% loan to value, so you have to keep 20% in. That equates to 317,000, which is what is left in the property of your own money.
Right.
So now your new mortgage is 1.2, and the mortgage monthly payment is based on 1.2 now, not the original amount. Is that kind of clear?
Yeah, so it's higher.
Yes, it is high, yeah.
What is the payment?
The payment now per month would be $66.42, $6,600. The income, so this upper unit that we're standing in, we'll see it shortly, is estimated $3,500 a month. Could be more. We have rented things that are similar to this to more, but could be less, but I don't think it'll be less. It'll be likely around that mark. Then the main floor, which we'll see, is a 2-bedroom. We're estimating $2,550. And the basement is going to be 2-bedroom as well. $1,950 is our estimate. For a total gross income is $8,000. Now this is all plus utilities, so you can see there's no utility payments by the landlord. This is all going to be done by the tenants, because there's separate meters for everything, right? Your property taxes estimates based on $5,600 a year. The insurance I have here is for $3,000 a year, but I think you told me it was about $2,200 or $2,100, so it's a bit over than what I put. Then I put vacancy allowance 2%, repairs and maintenance 2%. Cash flow is $322 a month. It's not a lot, but it's based on 4.5% interest rate on a 25-year amortization, because I'm going to be doing analysis on a 10-year to 15-year analysis, so I wanted to bump up the interest rate to kind of be a little bit more of an average versus what we can get today or what you guys got when you guys bought this. Any questions on these numbers?
One question on amortization. Why 25 instead of 30?
You could get 30,
Yeah.
but I put 25 because I wanted to make it more conservative.
Okay.
Now the next slide is going to be where, in my opinion, the one and done numbers get revealed. This whole chart is not including any cash flow. It's based on principal paydown and a 4% appreciation per year. Over the last 10 to 15 years, appreciation has been in double digits in these areas. I'm using 4%. In year one, you're not making anything based on the 1.5 million dollar reappraisal. Once you go down to year 1, year 2, year 3, all the way to year 5, your outstanding, your property value will be worth 1.8. Your outstanding mortgage balance will be $1,053,000, and your equity, if you were to sell it, minus your net invested capital, which is the $317,000. So basically, your profit would be $454,000 in 5 years. That does not include realtor fees. Once you get into realtor fees, it's about $100 grand.
Keys.
Just joking.
Keys.
And that equates to about a 29% return annually. If you go down to year 10, again, using the 4% appreciation, we're at 2.2 million. Your mortgage outstanding is 870,000. You're at just over $1 million of equity of profit with this property, based on a 4% appreciation and mortgage pay down. Now, where the real magic happens is if you wait till year 15 or beyond basically year 10. That's where really the principal pay down really starts to kick in. And your outstanding mortgage is 642, and your property value, or sorry, your property value is 2.7, and your property profit will be 1.7. Many people here probably think, oh, you know, good luck, $2.7 million for this in 15 years? There's no way. There's no way.
I give you 5 years.
Remember, I don't have a crystal ball, but remember the economic fundamentals of this area. Remember how much shortage of supply there is and how much demand there is, and that people would want to live here for not just today or tomorrow, but from 25 years from now. What the developments are happening, what revitalization is happening, why people are living here. If you go back to the 1979 when I was born, 40 years ago, yeah, that's right, 40 years ago, property values were, average property price was 70,000, and now the average price is 787. It 11 times its amount, its value. And back then, 70,000 was like good luck. Yeah, I know people are going to argue, but that was, you know, a lot less. You know. Okay, fine. I'm still talking about Toronto. I truly believe Toronto's the next Manhattan. I know we're 20 years behind, roughly, but I still believe that Toronto's mimicking that of Manhattan. Any questions on this? Yes.
When you talk about legal triplexes, are you purchasing the property as legal triplex, or are you converting it? Or are you finding a zone where it's actually allowed for triplexes?
Yes, the latter. So we're not buying legal triplexes. It'd be very, very challenging to find something that's a legal triplex.
Yeah.
So it's creating it.
Okay, so are you getting permits rezone?
Yep.
Rezoning
Rezoning, likely not.
yeah. Okay, so you're buying in a zone that allows legal triplex conversions.
That's correct. Yeah. Is that correct?
Okay, so how do you guys do it? Do you guys work from a duplex to a triplex?
That's Adam's part. So he's gonna be right after me. It's like literally one more slide, and Adam will be kicking in and talk about that. Conclusion. Toronto is only growing bigger and better. It cannot be painted with one brush. There's so many neighborhoods in Toronto that you have to really focus on one neighborhood, one community, and know it really well. Toronto Beach is where I believe it's at, and that's why I put my money there. Toronto's real estate is mimicking that of Manhattan. And again, I celebrated my 40th birthday a week or so ago, and I shared the 1979 prices compared to now. And I guess, you know, a point in that is, imagine you buy a property for your kids, and when they're 40 or when they're 25, when they're ready to move out, when they're done graduating university or school, and 25 years has gone by, and you know it's amortized over 25 years, so that will be free and clear for them. I think that's incredible. I don't want to say I wish my parents did that, but that's they say that to me. They say, I wish I did this. I'm like, it's okay, it's okay. I do want to end it off with one quote by my good friend Don Campbell. Don't wait to invest in real estate. Invest in real estate and wait. So that's a conclusion of mine. So we're going to go to, I don't know. He knows them. He understands what's involved. So when you have a property that you want to come see, that you have in mind, tell Adam that he'll know what to do. So welcome, Adam.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so I understand the main focus here is to look at this property in progress, and Jeff's going to be kind of walking through that. So Andre just asked me to give a bit of a preamble for that and what comes before that, how did we get here, and so I'll try to be brief, more so than Andre probably. Yeah, if there's any questions along the way, just shout them out. You don't need to put your hand up or anything, and we can talk about them. And if you feel more comfortable talking about it after, we can do that as well. If we don't go too late, we can hang out after we do the walkthrough. Okay. Yeah, so what is a triplex? So it's something that's been said a lot, and like if you ask a million different people, you get a million different answers, but it's basically 3 dwelling units, which is kind of what we're talking about inside an existing house. But so if we look to one of the zoning codes in Toronto, for the definition, it means the whole of a building containing and originally constructed to provide by horizontal division 3 dwelling units, each of which has an independent entrance. So by this definition, I've never done a triplex because there are no vacant lots in Toronto typically where you just kind of have the freedom to kind of build a triplex per this definition. So what we're really looking at is just dwelling units and putting them in potentially single-family houses, potentially 2-unit houses that we're trying to add units to and increase the density. So yeah, what we're really talking about is just multi-unit residential, and I know we're talking about 3 units a lot tonight, but it can be 2, it could be 4, it can be any number of units basically, but looking at the Toronto neighborhoods as the place to do it, and it's kind of an alternate to a condo living situation, which is also multi-unit in a way, but really getting into the neighborhoods. So yeah, just converting existing single-family houses into multiple units. So why are we doing this? Well, there's a housing crisis in Toronto, and there's a lot of condos, and this kind of provides an alternative living situation. So Toronto's very unique in that it has all these beautiful neighborhoods really close to downtown. Like if you look across North America, it's quite rare, and it's something that Toronto really holds close. So it likes to maintain the neighborhoods that are within walking distance to a lot of things, like Shops on Queen here, and there's numerous examples kind of along the Yonge line, but also east of Yonge and west of Yonge as well. So there's an effort to preserve those, but then also to increase density, or what we call number of dwelling units. So take this house for example, it still looks like the same house that it did, kind of cleaned up obviously at the front. It's been refreshed, but it still reads like a house, but there's the ability to have 3 households living here. So that's a really interesting way that kind of everyone's interested in increasing the density without causing more sprawl, creating more suburbs. So there's a lot of positive benefits. And then that's kind of why we do it. And obviously there's also it creates more rental units, and it allows people to get into the market and subsidize their own dwelling unit as well. So it's kind of symbiotic that way. Like people need places to rent, and like Andre was saying earlier, it's a bit of repetition, but people don't always want to buy a place, and they just want to live somewhere that's a good area. And then there's other people that want to buy and really lay down roots, but how do they do that? So there's a subsidy kind of relationship there that works well for both sides. And then the next thing is oftentimes like a phased approach is used to incrementally add units in these type of projects. So there's kind of the city looks at things in 2 ways. There's development, and then there's kind of a more of a subsidized kind of approach to adding units. So there's an exception to development charges, which is that you're allowed to add 1 unit at a time to an existing household or dwelling. So that's what we're doing here. We're adding 1 unit to begin with, so where there was 1 house, we're creating 2 units, and then there's the option to kind of do that again in the future, subject to certain criteria that we can kind of plan for as a future project, but it's really doing it kind of 1 at a time, and that's something that steers clear of development charges that are really for like big developments of new builds or condos or things like that, where the city recognizes that you're adding value to the city, which is great, but they also want a piece of that value and a charge. And these charges can be quite exorbitant, in the like 60,000 range for a 2-bedroom unit or something like that. So, which says, yeah, there's a lot of value being added here, but the city also is interested in that value. So these are some quick diagrams I drew, just looking at the variations of what a triplex could look like, very diagrammatic. So like on the left we have the layer cake, which is kind of like maybe the most uncreative one, but it has a lot of efficiencies as well. So we're looking at a 2-story house here potentially, one below grade, one on the ground floor and one on the second floor. It makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons. And then the other kind of end of the spectrum, there's the Tetris, which if you really want to start getting creative and really create kind of more interesting dynamic units, they're not all the same. Some are bigger, some are smaller. They don't have to be on top of each other. They can be beside each other in parts and have multiple levels. So this is kind of looking at what we're in right now, which we're just showing a line here for the semi-detached portion of it. And there's actually 2 stories on the upper unit that's accessed by the ground unit. There's a basement unit that has access on the ground, and then there's a ground floor unit as well. And then there's the castaway, which is some of the new possibilities that they're creating in Toronto for laneway houses. So there's the option to just fully remove a unit from the house, and that doesn't preclude you from separating the existing house into units as well. So there's a possibility for 3 in that organization, and these are just different examples, but there's kind of anything and everything in between that really kind of makes for a fun design process at the beginning. And then different approaches. So one way is just to demolish and build new. It's clean in a lot of ways. There's certain costs. So I'm just going to kind of lay the options out tonight, and then if you do have a project and we want to look in more detail, we can kind of weigh pros and cons and look at what possibilities are best for a specific site. Because although all the neighborhoods in Toronto are similar in a lot of ways, they're all very specific. There's different zoning that applies to different areas, and all sorts of specific criteria for the lot itself. So then there's subdividing a property or a house, which is kind of more what we're looking at here. I understand we had to rebuild the back because of the condition of it, but we're basically using the same envelope to accommodate 3 dwellings. And then there's the option to build an addition. So oftentimes you'll be building at the back. That makes a lot of sense. There's the option to build at the front, or sometimes on the side lots when there is setbacks and room to build basically there, and then even at the top or the bottom. So doing a top up on a single family bungalow, or maybe a 3rd story on a 2-story, depending on height restrictions. Kind of look at all that and see what's feasible and what makes sense. And then even the bottom, so we're talking about underpinning as well, that can be looked at as an addition. If you have a 4-foot basement and then all of a sudden you have an 8-foot basement, I'd call that a bottom addition. So really wherever there's space to grow and wherever makes the most sense, there's options to look at those too. And then build a case for a history of pre-existing use. So this is something that's come up a couple times where adding number of units, the city is interested in that, and they're also aware that there's a whole bunch of multi-unit houses that aren't properly built that way. They were just built without permits or things like that. But there's a group of houses, I guess, that falls into a category that predates zoning. So we didn't always have zoning in Toronto, and there's certain ways that, if you have, so in one example we had it looked like a 4-unit property, but the city records showed that it was a single family house. So City of Toronto Archives, there's actually records and stuff. So if you can find enough evidence that kind of goes back to support that it was actually 4 units and there's a mistake, there's a way to present that case for the city to kind of decide if it's supportable or not, and then you could already be at the 4 units and not have to start kind of at 1 and go incrementally up that way. So it's kind of an interesting case that came up. Any questions so far? Common challenges investors face. So there's probably a whole bunch of people in this room that might have a better input to this one, but this is something Andre asked me to talk about, and so these are kind of what what I'm kind of hearing secondhand in my own limited experience as an investor, things that have come up as well. So, yeah, like I asked this question first, what if there was no restrictions on what you could do on your own property? So I just, maybe it was late last night and I was thinking about this, but like, yeah, so like there's a range, like it could be just craziness, like with no rules, or it could be like really amazing, or it could be a kind of a hodgepodge. So what one person thinks is beautiful, their neighbor has a totally different opinion, and then what does our neighborhood look like? So I don't know, it's probably like not the best outcome. I actually read there's no zoning in Houston, if anyone's ever been there. So interested to know a bit more about that, but I think it's basically that just like, it's not as crazy as we think, because people just kind of tend to conform a little bit and want to look like everyone else to some extent in what their property looks like. So that's to say, like the bylaws that exist in the building code, they're kind of your friends, because yeah, your property is subject to it, but so is everyone else's. And at the end of the day, yeah, everyone's got to get along, and the importance of having a great street kind of takes everyone working together, and these kind of facilitate for that and give a guideline for everyone to kind of follow. There's certain things in the zoning and the bylaws and the building code that can kind of be annoying or questionable, but for the most part, it's really helpful stuff. So yeah, kind of got to work with it and go that way. And then, yeah, level of creativity, visualization. So I say level, I don't mean like more creativity is good. Like I've had some clients that are too creative and they'll just be like, what if we did this? What if we did this? And I kind of give like a no, and there's like 15 answers or no, and then there's like 16th idea, like yeah, maybe that's a good idea. And so if, yeah, like there's kind of like bringing it back down to earth people, and then there's a lot of people that walked in this house like, was the case maybe, and they were adventurous in looking what the potential was, but it's really hard to visualize when it's usually like smaller rooms and not modern spaces. So that's where I can come in, or we can do existing drawings and look at the space and look at it taking out some stuff, or kind of using a heavy hand to kind of adjust the spaces to make sense for what works. And then separations and connections. So yeah, with the city, I mean like the city at large, something Andre was talking about with parking. So it's even off the site, like how do you connect to the city from where you're gonna put these dwellings? So if there's parking, great. If it's close to transit, maybe you don't need parking on the lot, so that's another option. If it doesn't have either of those, it doesn't really support a strong case for high-income renters that potentially want to come there. Maybe it does for some other reasons, but those are the kind of how you connect to the city. And then on the property itself, a lot of these properties are semi-detached, either on one side or both. So there's a limited space on the front and at the back, if you're lucky enough to have a laneway, of how these units kind of coexist and how they're able to exit to the street or to the laneway. And so there's a lot of emphasis that goes into how these kind of work around each other to make sense. And then in the property themselves, looking at infrastructure. So here, for example, there's 3 separate heating systems. So they all have their own infrastructure that's within the unit. There's certain requirements to separate units for things like fire safety, so to delay the spread of fire from one unit to the next. So those have to be thought about. Even like for privacy and stuff, there's someone below you, there's someone above you. Things like sound separation, visual separation, views. There becomes like it's a more highly occupied house, and maybe you're not really close with your neighbors. Maybe you are, but at least you have the option to have your own space. And so we look at that in the design as well, and how it all comes together. And time and expense. So again, leading back to an approach where you were to introduce units incrementally, so adding 1 unit at a time, it could take a bit more time to do like basically 2 renovations. I guess I was talking. Basically 2 renovations to get to 3 units, and yeah, there's the cost of carrying the property that is a factor, or there's the cost of development charges, which is also a factor. So those are just obviously kind of the most obvious challenges. Is there any others that any of the people who have already started these kind of projects that are glaring ones that I haven't kind of touched on yet? They come up later. Just let me know. And then roles of an architect. So these roles are variable. That was my first answer. So everyone kind of wants to do certain, or some people, I'll say, want to do certain things that architects do, like design, and so it's not really a clear boundary of like what it used to be at some point where the architect kind of had control over everything, and it's much more collaborative now. So homeowners will have ideas, they look up ideas on the internet, so it's really working with the owners, and then we kind of reach out as well, and there's other things we can do that maybe span into planning a bit, or maybe span into construction a bit, but yeah, it just becomes more collaborative that way. So like I know things about construction now that are helpful when I'm doing drawings that aren't at all construction until someone else is there to build it. So yeah, I just kind of went into a spiel there of give direction, assist in navigating. So there's permits and approvals, there's building, there's getting someone to build it and have them bid on scopes of work and things like that. Different solutions. Engineers are also a part of the initial process, whether it be mechanical engineers for heating and cooling, or structural engineers if it's a kind of heavy-handed renovation, or if underpinning's involved. Yeah, giving insights, and the list kind of goes on to what everybody talked about. But yeah, and yeah, really like reflecting the client goals and kind of putting them, like clients have goals that aren't a designed multi-unit house, so I kind of listen a lot and kind of take that back and try to reflect what they're doing in the drawings, and something that makes sense and something can be built, because at the end of the day the drawings are just drawings unless someone can come along and put it all together. So I think that's kind of important.
Can I mention something?
Yeah.
You say that you can provide guidance or insight, but maybe they're not really understanding what type of insight. And I'll give an example.
Sure.
So let's just say we do come across this property right here, and we want to know if it's legalizable, because that's a big question. Can we actually legalize it? Well, first biggest thing is, and this is actually answer your question, so what do we look for when we're actually looking for a property? Some of the big things is, what's the ceiling height in the basement? Because if it's 6'5" is for a duplex, but 6'11" is for a triplex. So are you gonna have to underpin? You very likely will have to underpin in an area like this. Does it have parking? Because if it doesn't have parking, then is it in a neighborhood that will allow you to not need parking to be able to legalize it? The other thing is, how much space is there, or what's a setback between the houses? Because these houses are all built so close together that I think in order for you to have a legal access way through the back, you have to have a certain amount of space between the houses, unless you have a laneway, right?
Yeah.
So like, there's these types of insights that Adam can actually be able to help with, and there's a ton more, but these are just things that are just coming through my mind. But whether it is already a single family or it's currently duplex or triplex, in my opinion, it's irrelevant, as long as the permitted use allows for what you want to create. And if it allows for it, I'd say just make it an open canvas and create it. But just make sure that you have the main essentials in place for you to be able to make it legalizable. That's my take on it.
Yeah, so with that, like parking's a big one that comes up all the time. So in Toronto and East York, in this district of the city, they recognize that there's a lot of transit, there's a lot of walkability. So whereas in other parts of the city, there's a 1 parking space per unit requirement, here it's -1. So for 3 units, you'd require 2 parking as of right, or for 2 units, you'd only require 1. kind of, there's a recognition of that in Old Toronto, as they call it.
Can I say, isn't there an exception to the rule where if you don't have any parking, can't you still legalize it without going to committee? For duplex.
For a duplex, yeah. Yeah, so
But there's
going to
a-
a triplex, it would still require
Two.
a committee of adjustment. So that's, I guess, a thing I could say a quick couple seconds about is, we were talking about like, oh, what fits the neighborhood and stuff, so there's zoning requirements that, kind of are a prescriptive, recipe that you have to kind of conform to, but if for some reason you can't fit that criteria exactly, there's Committee of Adjustment in Toronto, which recognizes that because we have this one document that we're trying to fit every single property across the city into, there's gonna be situations where it can't exactly fit the criteria. So then there's a panel of members that decides that if you propose something outside of that, would they still recognize that as a minor variation from what's permitted, and if it's supportable, then they can approve it. And that's something that would be applied to the specific property in question, and it would stick with the property kind of moving forward if it was approved. So that can add time onto the front end of your project, but it's sometimes required.
If you want to avoid the COA, can you just make it a duplex first and then, add the additional parking spot in the front, and get a permit for front lawn parking, and then do a
Yeah, there's a lot of places that,
triplex after?
yeah, that's part of a phased approach. Sometimes you can add one unit now, but because of parking limitations, you can't add the second, so you either could apply for having one less parking than is required.
No.
What's less common is adding new front pad parking, because the city doesn't like that because it takes away from street parking, and there's certain areas that have just abolished it altogether. So again, it's really case by case, but yeah, it's a process. Anything else?
So do you ever get into like rezoning situations where you try to make it like the area into a triplex legal permitted use of?
Yeah, like typically rezonings for larger scale projects, and there's like a boatload of consultants and requirements that it's just really not within the cards for kind of this scale of
Yeah.
proposal.
Makes sense.
But on bigger projects for sure.
How long, can it cause a big delay in your project, or?
Yeah, so there's a committee, there's a schedule that's posted on the city website, and I think in this area right now, they're booking for late April right now. So it just depends on when the applications come in, and then they assign them dates kind of as they come in, and sometimes it's been as long as 8-month delays, and in other areas, like I think Scarborough, it's a couple months, even less, so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What are amazing questions that people can ask when hiring an architect? So like, what would you say that some of the best questions that your clients have asked to determine whether or not you really know what you're doing? Like, how do you hire an architect? I mean, I've had all kinds of people come up to me looking for an architect, and they'll just hire the first person because they're the cheapest, or
Yeah, like having done specifically these type of projects before in the areas we're looking at is, I think, very important because rules change kind of all over the city, and it's really a navigation process through what's locally, what the local regulations are in a lot of ways. Referrals go a long way, so if, like, usually it's someone who's referred someone to look at designing a triplex that's done it themselves, so I typically don't get asked a lot of questions, like,
does it matter if we hire
Just hands in.
does it matter if we hire somebody, an architect from Mississauga or from Kingston to do a project here?
yeah, not recommended.
Yeah.
At all. Like, I even hesitate on some people who have asked me to come outside of the city to do these specific types of projects because the local regulations are different, and it's kind of really different based on different municipalities. So, yeah, I'm most familiar with Toronto 100%, and that's where I like to work mostly.
I got another question?
Yep.
Alright. So you're an architect, how big of a house can you design?
So there's architects, and then there's people with a BCIN number. So BCIN number, they're limited to what's called small buildings, which is up to 3 stories, or I think 600 square meters, which is pretty big. But the 3 stories is really the limiting factor. But the architects don't have like an upper limit on the size of the building they can design. It's just a matter of, if it's really big, upping their insurance to cover that.
What are the other types of architects? It seems like a blanket term. Everybody you go to get a house design calls themselves an architect, but I've heard technician, technologist, what is that? What's the difference?
Yeah, so sometimes technologists have the skills to design a house, and they might have a BCI number which allows them to apply for permit. Even homeowners can submit their own permit applications for their own property they own, so it's kind of open that way. And then there's people like some certain designers and stuff that are really good at designing, but they'll still hire an architect as a sub-consultant to review their project for building code regulations, and essentially take the responsibility for the project for a sub-consultant role.
I'm gonna switch it up now. We're gonna do a tour, so get our legs moving. I appreciate you guys taking having patience in standing.
I want to talk a little bit about the house before we take a tour. Be really careful. I don't think the stairs were designed for 30 people at the same time, so maybe a couple people at a time. The upstairs is a little bit smaller. And just so you understand the layout of the house, the top 2 floors, to be clear, are 1 unit. The main floor currently is partnered up with the basement as a 2nd unit, and the basement is what we're going to break away eventually as a 3rd unit. Okay? Things to look out for when we're walking around. The obvious stuff, we're all adults for dangerous stuff. Don't touch anything that you're not sure. But things to look out for. I'm going to show you the different stages of construction. Okay. And what I've decided to do on this house is we are starting the finishes at the top and working down. Okay. So I want you to I started drawing out here the critical path, and I want you to keep an eye out of the critical path. Okay. And so this is the critical path that we're working on throughout this house. You're going to see various stages of insulation, okay? The homeowner in this instance has decided to insulate with spray foam. Okay, so you'll notice that the main floor, for example, just got spray foam. Currently in this house, the only source of heat is the basement floor, okay? Right now, as we sit right now, the temperature that you're feeling versus the outside of -5 is because of the basement floor. So that's pretty cool, right? Spray foam is the reason for that. And what we do is we started spray foaming at the top, because that's where your biggest heat loss is usually, through your roof. And as soon as we got that first layer in, Andre? As soon as we got that first layer of spray foam, you can feel the heat contained into the house, okay? And so we have water already turned on in this house, okay? And as a result, it's not freezing, okay? Which is pretty cool, okay? Do you mind if I share a couple of numbers for costs of trades? We're looking around 14, 15 grand for spray foaming a house this size, okay? And generally, like I think we talked, it's around, this is about a $500,000 reno, okay? So that's complete gut. They underpin the basement. There's hydronic floors in the basement. Keep an eye out for the sources of heat and cooling as we go through. You see that's a cold air return on the back of on the other side there's a shower there. Okay, so this floor is forced air, okay? And all of the house, the hot water, domestic hot water, is instant hot, okay? So that's the hung wall boilers that you're used to seeing, okay? And they're called tankless. And so one thing to note about having ductwork going through triplexes, okay? I really love doing multifamilies because I'm an investor like you guys, and they're really good cash flow. I love changing zoning. It's my favorite flip technique, because you can add a heck of a lot of value to a property, and all of a sudden your value is controlled by your rents, right? Because we're entering a different realm, right? We're getting into triplex, duplex, and when the appraiser comes out, you know this being working in banking, when the appraiser comes out, make sure you get your highest possible rents that you can right off the bat, and then get your appraiser to come in and make sure you can get that extra $50 in rent, right? So that what that means is make sure you stage the house really, really well. Make sure that it is beautiful so that you can get that highest rent, because $50, I don't know, what's $50 worth? That's a heck of a lot more value. Somebody told me $20 is like $10,000 or something crazy, okay? I just did a fiveplex. If we have some time, I'll show you the project I did before this one. And we got reappraised at the end. We had high rents, and our appraisal was $500,000 more than we expected. Okay, and I like to say that it's because I did a fancy house and did some nice designs and stuff. But the rents were $10,000 for the house. Okay, and so when the appraiser came out, he said, you know, I'm sorry, the number that I figured is actually it's going to be 50% more. Okay, and so that's pretty cool. So as you're walking through this house, keep an eye on the heating system. Keep an eye on the fact that there is a difference between the lighting on this floor and the lighting downstairs, okay? You'll notice that there's no boxes here, okay? This is not a fire separation ceiling, and so therefore we can put regular pot lights, okay? Something that I started doing in the last couple of years, everybody likes the look of a pot light because it illuminates the room really, really well. So we've got a surface mount pot light, okay? So in the lower floors, you do a surface mount pot light, then you still have that steel octagon box in the ceiling like this one does, okay? And that's what stops the fire. So the inspectors currently, I'll tell you right now, a little bit inconsistent in my opinion as the guy that's doing the building, but that steel box is supposed to stop the fire from transferring to the next floor, okay? And so if you still want pot lights, go with the pot lights now that are surface mount stick down about that much. In my opinion, not a heck of a lot of difference, right? You still get a nice looking light, frosted, LED, cheap on electricity. So keep an eye on that. Also, when you're doing the triplex and you're going through fire separation ceilings, you could also heat with water, so hydronic. And the advantage to that, if you wanted, would be the ductwork, which I'm going to show you on the lower floors. Sometimes we have to go up and around the ductwork with drywall in order to stop the fires, okay? And so as we're coming through, I'm going to show you what the different ways to stop fires, okay? When we get into like a $500,000 reno, you're going to see that like tens of thousands of dollars are spent on fire separations. And that's usually the investor that doesn't foresee the costs in the fire separation costs, okay? Really, really important. But I will tell you, everybody complains on the client side to me, contractors never go over budget, right?
No,
Right?
no, why would
Right,
they?
okay, but one of the things that everybody on the client side doesn't understand usually, or they're starting to understand, is getting a lot better, is that when you do fire separations, things can change. Everybody's interpretation of that code is a little bit different, okay, because it seems like in the world of inspecting, it's still something that's relatively new, but really, when you're picking a contractor, picking an architect, please pick people that have a little bit of experience with that, and then same thing with the realtors. I think this guy's doing a bang up job for a realtor and being informed on this whole process. I want to give him a round of applause. Okay, so we're going to take a walk through, okay, and then you guys can pop questions as you go. Okay, I'm a huge fan of spray foam. Done a couple of houses. Okay, you get about R6.9 per inch. Okay, the nice thing about the spray foam is it gets in everywhere and stops all the gaps. Okay, so when you put insulation, a lot of the time you have a little air gap or something. This may not be like an R40 insulation, but because it stops everything, this house is going to be so airtight and so cheap monthly to heat. Okay.
Is there a reason why you stopped there?
Yeah, right behind there is the next electrical panel. And so this is, below that level is only framed, not insulated yet. So he's still running wires in there.
Wow.
So we're like I said, we're doing one floor at a time, and we're dropping down, so.
This is gonna be the kitchen,
You want to, get someone to bring the tail down?
Yeah, no problem. I'll just talk about the entrance is from here. You're walking into your kitchen.
the main unit.
This is the main floor entrance. So you walk into your kitchen, eating area, and sorry, explain this.
So kitchen, living room, dining room, and then 2 bedrooms and then a bathroom. And then laundry, stackable laundry here, closet, and then
Okay, so I'm gonna give you my best shot at explaining a fire separation. How many people already know what a fire separation looks like? Drywall fire separation, hands up. How many people know what a drywall fire separation looks like? No? Nobody. Okay. So if you look up here, you're gonna see 5/8 drywall on the ceiling. Okay, you're gonna see sound attenuation bats. How many architects do we have here? None? Okay. Right. So if you heard me talking before about the pot lights, remember upstairs with the pot lights we could see the hole, right? Okay, and now this is gonna be a pot light. Or no, this is gonna be a pot light. Okay? So the difference is when we drywall, you're gonna see a hole, but you're gonna see this inside. So you're gonna have metal protection in the fire separation ceiling. Remember I said this floor, the main floor, is a separate unit from the second floor. Okay? And so I want you to see that all of the boxes are metal. There will be pot lights and they will be sticking down from the drywall a little bit. Okay?
Wait, Jeff, are you telling me that the metal is the fireproof part or the drywall in behind it?
The metal is.
How is that?
Okay?
There's holes in the metal.
Yeah, so we will end up putting fire caulking in those holes. Okay? Yeah. Okay, and so the metal is actually stopping the fire from transferring, okay? Now, I was gonna say upstairs, the fire separation, the reason for it, why do we do fire separation? Do you think that, like, if we get this whole house starting up on fire right now, that because we have a layer or two of drywall, it's gonna stop the fire from going up? Absolutely not.
It gives you more time.
Exactly,
So all
exactly.
it does is it buys you more time between units before the next unit catches on fire so that people can actually exit. The only reason why I know this is because my sister lived in a townhouse unit with no fire separation and all 8 units burnt all the way to her house. So she was the second house in the row. The fire started on the very end unit. She was the second house to catch fire, and within 6 hours, all 8 houses were fire damaged as well as water damage, of course, because they all got flooded after the fire department came. So it's important, not only if there is also on the shared wall. So this particular house has the shared wall that needs to be fire rated as well, because if there's a fire next door, you don't want the fire coming through to this unit.
Yeah, excellent. And so what it does is it'll just give you that 10 or 15 or 20 minutes extra, or a little bit more, like 40 minutes in theory, so that you can have time. You're going to smell, you're going to feel the heat, you're going to hear the noise to get out of your house. Okay. So a lot of the units, even on a second floor, you'll notice have two egress points, right? Okay. And so that's in case of fire. And so fire separations are designed to give you time to get out of your house in the event of a fire. Same thing like interconnected smoke alarms. Okay. And so the hydro, the electricity is separated between these units, okay, but you're gonna have smoke alarms that are tied together going all through the house, okay? So in other words, you start a fire in the basement, it's gonna go off to the whole house, okay? And that's really, really important when you're trying to get through, okay? So you can see we've got the styrofoam foam insulation here, and you can see the different stages. On the top floor we were painted. Today we just primed the second floor. And then tomorrow or the next day, I think we're starting on drywalling this floor. Okay, we're getting all loaded up here, and we're going to start drywalling this floor. Okay, so the stage that we're at is the framing is complete, the electrical is complete, and the heating and all of the stuff that goes inside of the walls is complete, and we've passed insulation inspection. Okay, very important. Don't forget to get your inspection. I always recommend at this stage as well, as everybody walk through, take videos, take pictures, because inevitably you're going to put a nail in a wall and it's going to hit something, or you're going to want to know if you can mount a TV, and it's really nice to just go back on your computer and look through and see a video and remember that you can hang a cabinet on that wall or something like that, okay? And so, is there any questions, first of all, about what you see here?
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Is that individual drywall in between those joists, is that for fire rating as well?
Yes, very good question.
Drywall on the inside,
Okay.
is that like part of building code now?
So,
On the
this,
ductwork?
yeah, absolutely. So, what this is, I'm going to give you a trick, guys, about how to make triplexes. Okay, I'm going to save you hundreds of dollars. Okay, when you design the triplex and you go through with the heating guy and the architect, you decide that it's going to be ductwork right here, right? A good idea is to take this 5/8 drywall, put a sheet up against the wall that comes out 4 feet this way. I'm talking after all of the subtrades have been through and put their pipes, right? And take a sheet and come down this way before this guy goes in. Look at how difficult it is to cut all around there, okay? So if you were smart as the person that's running, or you're the client, or you're doing your own GCing, general contracting, put that drywall up before this guy, okay? So the guy comes along, he puts in his pipes and stuff all through the floor, the HVAC guy and the plumbing guy and stuff, and then you get that 5/8 fire separation drywall up above this guy, okay? So that helps you for sound transfer, helps you for fire, and then you can put in your pipes, okay? Because it just makes it that much easier on the person doing the drywall, because the inspector is going to do this and feel inside there to make sure that drywall is done, okay? And then you even want to put one coat of mud, one coat of drywall mud, okay? And also, if there's a new place where you have your interior partition walls, okay, on the top of that should be a 5/8 layer of drywall, okay?
Where, Jeff?
On the top of the interior partition walls, okay? So if you look in the bedroom there, okay, the non-load bearing walls, they should have 5/8 drywall on top of it, okay? And so otherwise you're gonna have to do some sort of compensation and come up to an agreement with your inspector. I always try and get the inspector out right at the beginning of the job and say, hi, my name's Jeff, and you do a little walk through with him out of respect and get his interpretation of the building code, and just check and say, look, this is the way I interpret it, this is my plan, and gain his respect. I've done thousands of inspections with the inspectors. If you can get them on your side, your job and your client's job is a lot easier, okay? So the idea is you want to have a continuous layer of the 5/8 fire separation drywall right through this whole floor, okay? Now, if we're heating with forced air, it's really nice for air conditioning, but do you think that there's a lot of sound transfer through this?
Yeah.
Okay? Who here has lived in an apartment where you're below or above another person and you can hear them talking downstairs, right? When you put holes like that through the floor system, that's what sound transfer goes through, okay? Now imagine if you're putting water pipes for heat, and you're putting the old rads or the new style of rads or something. The nice thing about that, if you put a water pipe through a fire separation ceiling or wall, do you think that's okay? Legally? And this isn't a trick question, think about it. If I'm trying to stop fire, is it okay to run water through it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Okay? So if you're doing an apartment building and you're trying to do multifamilies, do you think it's okay to heat with water?
Yeah.
Right? So, because what's going to happen, right? Well, I could argue with the inspector and say, the inspector says, well, this water pipe, I don't know, wherever it went. The water pipe, I'm talking the water supply pipe, okay, which is different from a drain pipe, right? These here. The water supply goes through and it catches fire. What's going to happen? It's going to explode. What's going to happen to the fire? Fire is going to go out, right? So you can do that, okay? And do you think that there's going to be less sound transfer if you're running water through your floors for heat? Do you think it's going to be easier to put drywall on the bottom here because you don't have to put it here because it's water that's going through there, right? So look at the amount of work here that it takes to go above these pipes with the drywall. First of all, the drywaller probably isn't even the drywaller, it's the carpenter or framer that's doing the drywall, because the drywaller's not on site yet, right? So, okay, so that's a trick. Okay, if you guys do it with your pens and notepaper, I think you just saved hundreds of dollars. Okay?
And you
So,
put the
there's two
drywall.
tricks.
You put the drywall there because of the heat vent, right?
Yeah, so the heat vent, we don't want to have bulkheads if we can help it, right? We've got one here that's necessary, we've got one here that's necessary. But the heat vent, right now, in theory, if our drywall fire separation is here, like you can see it, right? The heat vent is above, but it's coming through, and there's no metal like there is here inside of there, right? So the fire could travel through, and that's why the inspectors want to see the fire separation drywall here, okay?
Is it on the underside as well, like the subfloor on the top?
So there's a part of the building code that has, the architect can tell you more about this. There's ULC approved assemblies. An assembly means it's a floor assembly, for example, like 2 layers of drywall and then a joist with sound attenuation. So it's the whole thing as an assembly. That's the
Right.
fire separation. So it's not just the fire, but it starts on the bottom, and that's where you want to stop the fire.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so, okay, so a couple tricks, like, I don't know if you understand how valuable that is, to get that drywall up there in advance, like, you guys probably do, like you guys swing a hammer a little bit, I recognize a couple of you. I bet you a lot of people could put a sheet of drywall up before that goes up. But I know that afterwards, if I put that drywall, it's gonna take me hours, okay? So, yeah, so that's a pretty good, so those two things. So now you've learned the pot lights to use, you've learned how to heat it, and you've learned how to do fire separations. Does anybody have any questions about fire separations? Okay? Yeah.
Excuse me, it was my understanding that if you have interconnected smoke alarms, that you don't necessarily need the 5 inch. Is that
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, and so go out into the field and feel out your inspectors. And so in theory, where's Adam? He's not down here? Okay, so in theory, absolutely. Straight out of the book, absolutely. And I think that's a brilliant statement that you just made. The problem is that some of the inspectors that are out there, they don't know that. Okay, and so I would recommend that you get it in writing from your designer who's designed your project, and then give that to your inspector. And then if he doesn't, then Adam and I were talking about this in the last couple of days, and he said that he's prepared to write a letter to the inspector or to the inspector's boss. Okay, because that can influence price and stuff. Yeah.
So you mentioned heating using hot water is a good idea to avoid the ducts, but then what would you do for the air conditioning?
Air conditioning, you could do ductless.
Oh, okay.
Right? You know what the ductless is? The hung wall guy? Right?
Like,
And so a lot of these 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, 1 or 2 of those units, and they'll cool.
Okay.
Right? And then in the basement, a lot of basements are cool already too. So naturally. Okay? But forced air is like economical, and some people really like it. They say it's a different type of heat. It's up to you. Okay? But I'm saying, like, coming off of doing 5-plex, triplex, that's something that, my last one, we were building it out of our own pocket, and so you're watching every penny, right? So, yeah. And so there's also something called an STC rating, which is sound transfer. And so these guys are used for the sound transfer. And actually, this is a really good example. This is a test. Does anybody know what this bar is? Okay? So resilient channel. So you screw on this side through these holes. It's used sometimes to straighten a ceiling. So if I have one joist that's dried out and it's crowned upwards or downwards, the nice thing about this is you put a screw on this and it flexes down. So it takes the high spots and low spots away. Also, it's really good for impact sound. So if you're upstairs and you're crashing around and playing with the kids and stuff like that, and somebody's down here having some quiet time, sound transfer for impact happens by the amount of screws and boards that are in contact with the things that are vibrating, okay? And so these resilient channels get screwed in perpendicular to the joists, and they're screwed in with a drywall screw here and here as we're putting them in. And as a result, your drywall, when you have that resilient channel, isn't in direct contact with this joist, okay? But we'll share with you, you guys are, I don't know why you're not taking notes. Holy cow.
They have this on video.
I think that so far we saved $7,000 here. Sorry. Yeah. So we're going to try a new sound transfer technique. Okay, we're doing these multi-families and stuff. We're trying to get better and better every time. So there is, people are familiar with drop ceilings, T-bar ceilings. Yeah. Okay. So there's a product. Apparently it's been out for a while. It's new to me though. Where you can screw the drywall into the track ceiling. So you put in the track ceiling frame, your T's and your main T's and stuff. You know, you've got the 2 foot by 4 foot panels or the 2 foot by 2 foot panels. And then you take a layer of drywall and you screw it to the underside of that track, okay? And the nice thing about that track is you have a wire holding up the track about 1 every 2 feet or so, okay? So the only thing that's in contact with the joist now isn't a resilient channel, isn't a sheet of drywall, but it's just the track bars, the little wires that go up to hold it up, right? So you can imagine if sound transfer is vibrations, impact sound, I'm talking, not the voice sound, the impact sound. So you hit that joist on the floor above, the sound comes down through the joist, through the screws on the drywall, and then only these little pins that are every 2 feet, right? So I don't know, maybe I'm a nerd or something, but I'm pretty excited about this. This is the first one that we're gonna try out. I'm pretty excited. Andre's been really cool about letting me try some new things here and stuff. And so I think it's gonna be brilliant. I think, and then, don't quote me on this, but there's a relatively new track that, I think it's about 2 inches. If you were to put the 2 foot by 4 foot tiles in it, it could be 2 inches of ceiling height lost only. Okay, so when you got 9 foot ceilings like you do here, you don't even notice it. Okay, so there, you can cheat on your next one and educate your general contractor. Okay, so I think you were talking. This is the kitchen of the main floor, access from the back. The front that we just walked through, you just walked through a fire separation wall and didn't even know it coming in here. So that will get drywalled up and closed up in the next couple of days, where Christy is in the back. And so the main floor is getting separated from the basement. This doorway here, right where the basement set of stairs is, will get drywalled over in phase 2. Okay, so if you got a good architect that is good at planning that out, then we're going to close that off. That's going to be a fire separation wall for the basement. The basement has direct access to outside. Okay, and so that's one of the criterion to determine how thick your ceiling drywall is going to be in the basement. If you have direct access, if you look in the tack box details, they'll give you drawings that say that you may be able to get away with a 15-minute fire separation, like 1/2 inch drywall on the ceiling, if you have interconnected smokies with one entrance. Okay, so that's a good question if you want to sound smart when you're talking to your architect. Okay, so direct access to outside, maybe I can save on some drywall. Okay. Okay, so I think we'll drop downstairs and be prepared to get warm. Okay, because the source of heat, we got you can feel the floor when it gets down. Kitchen.
Socks up enough in this basement.
We're in the kitchen living area here. We've got a bathroom. We've got a nice bright window with lets lots of light in. In front there, in that little bulkhead area, there's a place that has potential for a television to be mounted to. Behind it will be, potentially we could put the 3 water meters in there, okay? And that's a sewage ejection pump, okay? So you have to use a sewage ejection pump when the floor is lower than the drain to the road, okay? And so underneath here we have the water pipes that are controlled by the boiler that's in the back. This is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, okay? This is my favorite business model. I think this is gonna be one of the first places to rent. Honest to goodness. We've got over 8 foot ceilings, direct access to outside. And again, all the utilities are separated, okay? If anybody wants to see me after, I can tell you of a technique that we're using where the homeowner can have a digital reading to see the consumption of water that the other units have in order to separate the water consumption, okay? It's a little trick, all right?
So, tricks, I love it.
Yeah, giving them away. Should have upped the prices. Okay, so here's another bedroom. Okay, and you can see that this hasn't been insulated yet down here, guys. Okay? Okay, so this is what it looks like when it's framed. Okay? And then this will get the 5/8 trowel on the ceiling as well.
Jeff, each floor has its own box.
Electrics? Yeah. Yeah.
But this is the only legally duplex.
Right, currently, yeah. In a duplex, you can still have 3 boxes.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
3 meters or 3 only?
You can have 3 electrical boxes. You can have a pony panel that could be, like, for example, when you're doing a garage and you put in the garage a different panel. So that's 3, right? Okay.
Can I have Chantel say something like the Underpinnig?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chantel, can you come and give us your
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was just taking equipment and left here a long time ago.
So basically, Chantel works for Rock Bottom Underpinning, and she underpinned this place physically, like literally just her.
Yes, just me. Good old shovel.
I'm joking. She's,
Yeah.
but she's like, so
I'm very hands-on.
I want you to kind of just briefly explain a bit about the process and why that wall may not have full waterproofing versus this wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the process for underpinning when you're underpinning a basement and you're underpinning a semi, the first stage is requesting permission from your neighbor to underpin what's considered a party wall. If they don't, or they don't give you permission, It doesn't mean that you can't lower the basement, it just means your options on the party wall are gonna change slightly, which means you may have to do a bench. Nobody wants to do a bench in Toronto homes because they're very narrow. And the rule of thumb is, and Adam can clarify if he is here. Is he here? 7 to 1, right? 7 to 10. Okay, so 7 inches out, 10 inches down, right? The other way around. 10 inches out, 7 inches down. So basically, if you want to go 2 feet, you're gonna have a quite wide bench on that shared wall. So you want to kind of be friends with your neighbors right off the bat. Even if you are investing in the property, introduce yourselves to them right off the beginning if your intentions are to underpin.
But you do that actually.
I do. So I go above and beyond, and most underpinners don't do this, but I go above and beyond, and I make friends with your neighbors before you do. And I get them to sign a party wall agreement on my behalf, and then I provide it to people like Adam to send to the city and get us a permit. So that's your first stage. Then the process itself, once we receive the permit from Adam, who works out all the underpinning stages are all documented on the permit plans, and then they're stamped by a structural engineer. And then once that's in my hands, I'll schedule the project. And underpinning is done in stages. You can obviously not dig out the entire basement at once because you don't want to ever jeopardize the structural integrity of the house. So the most you can do is 4 feet wide sections. So you'd break the sections in the basement down to either sections 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you would never go wider than 4 feet. So 48 inches max. My company does a 40-inch, typically rule of thumb. When we're working, that's just what we like to do. Keep it a little smaller, it's a little safer. And what you would actually do is excavate all section 1s at the same time. And then they're inspected, formed, poured. Then you excavate stage 2, then stage 3, and stage 4 if there is a stage 4. Once that's completed, all those stages are inspected by the building inspector except stage 1. Stage 1 is only inspected by an engineer. The building inspector will not come out to inspect stage 1 because he wants a letter of report stating that it's safe for him to come inside. Okay? So he's just like, I don't know who's there, I have no idea who you've hired. Give me a letter stating that if you're working there and you've gone inside and it hasn't fallen on you, then I'll go inside. So that's basically what they want. They will not come inside your house unless they have that initial letter of underpin. They also want a final letter. So they never want to take responsibility for anything that happens in your house. So they have an engineer sign off on the entire underpinning before you can close the permit. So if you work with a company that's licensed and have been doing this for a long time, typically they'll take care of all those inspections for you and you don't have to worry about it. And they'll provide you with the letter at the end of their project as well. It's kind of like an insurance for you. After the underpinning is complete, my company does what's a delta wrap, so we waterproof from the inside. So we do a new weeping tile system all around the perimeter of all the walls, even the shared wall. So we have a continuous loop, and we run it into the sump pump pit, which you'll see at the back. The delta goes up as high as the exterior grade. So you want to keep it normally about 12 inches above the exterior grade. So if there's snow sitting up against the house and it does come down, keep in mind the bottom half of your house is new foundation wall. It's going to be the most prone to having water enter. So it's protected because any water that comes in from this wall is going to trickle down this bubble system and go into a drain that's below the slab. Okay, and that drain all the way around goes into the sump pump pit at the back and then gets pumped out to the backyard. That's where it's in the backyard, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I do a lot of these. So the reason why the delta on that side doesn't go up all the way is because first off, that's an interior wall. It's shared with the neighbor. So the part of the delta is only, you'll notice on the bottom half, it's actually on the underpin. That's the new foundation. The house on the other side actually also has an underpin basement, but if they didn't, I'm protecting because that whole area would have been exposed to dirt on the other side. So it's all wrapped so that if there was water penetrating underneath that house, it can't come in my new foundation wall. So it doesn't need to go up to grade because it's not exposed to the elements. It only needs to be protected on the bottom. So if you actually look at the delta, you can see over here, basically if you stood on top, this is all new foundation below here. You can't see it now, but this is what we had in ceiling height. If I took a ladder and I was standing up here, you would see the complete difference
already had it Underpinnig, why did you need to do again inside?
We didn't. So
Okay.
in the case of this house, the neighbor next door was Underpinnig when they purchased the home. And so to utilize and save money, the homeowner contacted them and said, we are also going to underpin. In their plans, they originally had to bench this wall. That's what they had on their plans. So they had underpinning on 3 walls, benching on the party wall. And so the neighbor decided that he was going to wait until they purchase the house so that they can sign a party wall agreement together and have this wall underpinned together. So I actually never charged them to underpin this wall. What I did was I reached out to the contractor so that I wouldn't have to do more work for myself. And I said, please, if you're gonna underpin it from the other side, great, my homeowner is gonna save some money. But I had asked them to put a piece of plywood on this side. So what they did was they formed, not only did they form the front, they formed the back end. So when I exposed this and I dug down, so there was dirt up to here, when I broke the concrete and I dug down, there was plywood all along this wall, and all I did was rip it down and it was nice and clean. Over and done. Now, if the underpinning had been completed prior to them purchasing the house, and they got a party wall agreement from someone else, most likely they wouldn't have put that piece of plywood there. So when I exposed the wall, I would have had jagged concrete everywhere. And it would have taken hours to chip it all down and make it all smooth. So I did this so my guys don't yell at me, to be honest with you. I reached out to them, made it easier for the guys. They literally excavated and it was nice and clean and done. Because when they have to chip down the concrete, you get a little angry. At me, not at anyone else. So yeah, basically, once all the waterproofing is completed, we move on to drains. So I take care of everything below the slab. So we lay down a gravel base, we level it out, we put in all new plumbing. So you're gonna have, your bathrooms roughed in, drains only. I'm only doing drains, no water, because I only do what's below the slab. That's also when you do in-floor heating. So after the drains are inspected and passed, you move on to in-floor heating, and then your final slab. And that's it. And then I'm out of your hair and you never see me again. Unless you like me and you call me for fun. So,
Thank you, Chantal.
no problem.
How do you choose the right contractor? Is there anything that you guys can, is there anything that we should ask or know when we want to choose, whether we're managing it ourselves or choosing to find someone like yourself? What should we do? How do we approach it?
I would say the biggest question to ask a contractor, if you really want to corner them, is, and you're looking at doing projects like this, is what was your last project, and have you done a project like this before? And and look them straight in the eyes, and if somebody hasn't done a triplex before and they said, well, but I want to learn, it's complicated. We've just touched on it for an hour or two tonight, and there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot of contractors out there, but I would recommend getting somebody that has done exactly this before and has done it recently, that's up to date with the codes. There's a lot of contractors that don't even understand fire separations. I would say momentum probably is the most important.
What do you mean momentum?
So momentum is, so if you've got a contractor that specializes in doing handyman services and he does one-day projects, half-day projects, that sort of thing, then he doesn't have momentum and he doesn't have the trades to support him. He's gonna have sub-trades that are gonna be like, maybe he's got a plumber that is capable of doing like one bathroom or something like that. But what I've found is, I can remember doing a project before this one, we were doing 5 units and we interviewed 11 plumbers. Nobody wanted to do 5 bathrooms, 5 kitchens. They were just afraid of it and we couldn't even get a price. Okay, and then the difference between me and you when I'm talking about momentum is that if you go out and hire a carpenter or a plumber, a lot of the time they're not even going to return your call. Okay, but I'm feeding these guys. I've got a team of guys that my plumbers worked for me for almost 20 years. Okay, and having moved out of the city for a couple of years and coming back, I'm just getting all the trades back, and it's just like I can just feel the momentum going again, and so it's almost like I'm kind of like back in your shoes if you're doing it the first or second or third time and you're really struggling to get trades, but now I can just feel it starting to flow, and so I really am conscious of momentum. If you've got a contractor that has momentum and he's been doing similar projects like this, when you're talking to him, he's going to make it seem like it's easy, okay, and as opposed to like everything is a big deal. So momentum is something I'd look for.
Any questions? anything about the legal process, legalization, the importance of it, costs of this renovation.
Do you guys ever touch the exterior at all, or just it stays the same typically?
On this project?
Not on this particular project, but like on other projects, just out of curiosity.
Yes, we pretty it up because we tend to buy houses that need the renovation, so
Okay.
they seem to be outdated. Biggest part is windows, the frames of the windows, the eaves troughs, the roof, maybe even a paint, depending on what exterior there is. Decks, landscaping like grass or sod or patio stones. So yeah, there is some, but not the actual facade. We're not like completely redoing it where it's gonna look completely different.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is, I think, Adam, I don't know, here. So you can't, I think the rule is that you're not supposed to, you're not supposed to like change the facade to make it look like 3 separate entrances, right? Like, you have
Yeah.
to keep it.
There's something about, in zoning, about maintaining the character of the neighborhood, mostly on the street side, so
Right.
it's not changing that street facing facade. And a lot of the Toronto houses were built before the zoning, and they're already bigger than what would be permitted as of right as a new construction. So you're allowed to maintain that, but to add to it, you're again going to committee of adjustment or things like that to add more, which I think you're talking about more of an addition. But there is occasionally where you'd find, it's not like this house, but like a single story house where there's the option to build another story, or there is room to grow based on lot size.
I got a question. What's the price difference between a boiler system and forced air in the basement?
That's a pretty general question. Like, so, like, it could be, like, it depends on how many runs you've got, like, it's kind of not comparing apples to apples, but, so just wing it, I don't know, where's Andre right now? He's the one that, did you get an idea of the cost difference between the two?
Because we did the inflow meeting as well, so it's a kind of a package price that we got. But
Yeah,
it's more expensive, but.
it's usually more expensive for the in-floor, because it depends on the square footage. So you've got the labor, put all the pipe in, as opposed to, you know, several runs, which is a little bit less. I would say generally speaking, the boiler system is a little bit of an upgrade, and the parts are quite expensive that are around, all the pumps and everything. And so, I bet you off the cuff, don't quote me, but maybe you're 20 or 30%. I don't know if anybody in the room here, I'd say, no, that's a really general. Yeah, that's a really general statement, but, it could be controlled by square footage. Generally, you've got like a good chunk of your expense is the actual boiler system, and then, you know, this stuff out here, like you're a handy guy, I've heard of people helping and doing a lot of the loop layout, cause that's like a day's labor right there, and so, you know, that's a creative way.
Yeah.
But I just think that in the basement, that typically is cool, I think that this is the great job here, and it really feels like it's dried it out down here, it doesn't feel like a basement, so.
Any question?
So this right now would be a legal duplex? As is, like, right now, when the inspector
Duplex.
were to come in? And then, is there a time before you can have someone come in to inspect it as a triplex?
Yeah,
No,
I saw.
you just have to, you finish the permit and close the permit for the 2-unit, and then you can apply for a 3-unit after that.
Okay, there's no change in zoning or anything like that, you just have to get it inspected 2 different times?
Like if the zoning changes in Toronto, it's not good. It takes really long for these things to happen, so, but yeah.
Do you have to open the walls to do that? For them to be inspected, to be triplex?
No, if you document it with photos and things like that.
That's part of befriending the inspector and having a good line of communication. And so they could, you know, they could say no, but, because we're documenting.
You tell the inspector that you're planning to do.
Yeah, I'm 100% upfront,
Upfront.
yeah.
So the only reason you're not doing triplex right off the bat is to avoid the development fee?
There's that, and there's, potentially a committee of adjustment application. They would have to, be kind of checked before that, so to get a building permit right away, and get kind of shovels in the ground, so to speak. That was the first order of business, and then to get that 3rd unit that, may require other applications, we kind of planned for that during the first phase.
But the city's clearly like onto the fact that people do this, but it's considered like okay to do it in stages? There's no pushback or,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's certain, zoning regulations, and
yeah.
if you abide by them, it's fine.
Yeah, it's a good lesson, though, it's a good question, and I think it's a very valuable one as well.
Andrea, can you elaborate more the word legal beside the fire comply and the building comply? People not gonna have in a piece of paper legal anything when they buy or sell? Can you elaborate that, the word legal?
In my opinion, legal, from a real estate agent perspective, if someone tells us it's legal, I'd like to see permits that say it's been completed, but also that the city recognizes it as a registered 3-unit dwelling. Or two, whatever, yeah, whatever you're asking it to be legal as, that's what you wanna make sure that the city recognizes it as such.
We see the paper.
That's, yes.
Because I understand for the city, as long you have a building comply and a fire comply, they consider it.
Yeah, I think, fire, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's retrofitted, so if there's something that changes in the rules for fire, and now interconnected smoke alarms is not enough, you need something else, like, you know, those strobe lighting? Is that something that, if there's I have a legal duplex and a triplex, but I don't have strobe lighting, because back then it wasn't required, do I still need it?
No. If you do open a permit to do further renovations, if there's things that can be upgraded that don't incur significant costs, inspectors might request it. But then it depends on the actual writing of the new regulations and investigating if it's actually required or if it's just highly recommended.
In terms of value, if a place is legal, it does offer more value, especially with triplexes and higher. With duplexes, not so much, because there's so many houses out there in this downtown core that have basement en suites, but are not legal, like 99% of them are not legal. And for something to say it's legal, for a duplex, it does not provide that much more value. It doesn't, from my experience, it does not. But once you hit the triplex and higher, absolutely, it does.
I know, I'm saying that, otherwise people start to ask you, what is the word legal in the,
Oh, yeah.
gonna drive you crazy.
Yeah.
Because nowhere gonna be written that information,
No.
unless you have all the papers in the application, I know that.
Yes.
People gonna be asking you, where is the word?
Yeah, good question.
I got a question.
Yes.
I'm seeing some properties that has the term triplex, and some of the property has 3 self-contained units, right? But I heard that this term triplex came at I don't know which year came that term, and before that year, let's say 1950, whatever, they used that term self-contained units. Do you know something about that?
Yeah.
Is this still a legal triplex?
Yeah, there's like no difference in how they're organized inside the house. It's just a matter of under what period of zoning that it was reviewed, and the person that reviewed it, like even if you review something today under different examiners, they'll call it different things, but on the paper it's still the same construction, so that's what matters. But so they can be kind of interchangeable words for the same thing, depending who you ask.
I wasn't really aware of that. I thought the word triplex meant that you built this thing pretty much from scratch, and 3-unit dwelling meant it was a renovation that you converted into a legal triplex. That's what I thought, but I guess.
It's like, right now there's a consolidated zoning for the amalgamated Toronto, and then there's old zonings for each of the old boroughs, and so they have conflicting definitions, so, but they're both measured for current applications, so, sorry for the confusing answer, but.
In the end, it's the same thing, right? That's all.
Yeah.
It's still legal.
There's something where it's like more of a nanny suite, if the suite is within an existing suite, like they're more interconnected, which is something a little different, but, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. Question to you, Jeff, and to Andrew. I noticed that the plumbing here are flex piping. I've seen some conditions that, I don't know, something about flex piping is maybe disadvantage or resale or something like that.
There's an advantage?
Disadvantage, I guess. Is that, how long will it last, or will it last for a while, or like being a plastic or as opposed to copper?
I'd say that it's tested, but it hasn't been around long enough to say what it's gonna be like. Nobody's seen it for 20 years.
Right.
So, it's industry standard right now. You never see copper, hardly any at all, like, unless you're in a very high building where it's required and it's a higher level of fire separations. But I don't see it in practice at all anymore.
Yeah, because I've seen a condition where no flex piping or something like that. I don't know.
I have seen.
No, are you talking about kinetic?
it's a little
something
different.
like-
Yeah,
How do you pronounce it?
Clitec, that's the
Clitec,
flexible, in
yes.
condo,
It's in
they have
condos.
to, in condo.
And townhouses.
I know in
But
condo, in townhouse,
but now they're not allowed, like
No,
now
it's
they're
kinda-
ready.
That's rip out, if you see, it's a condition for the bank to
Okay,
give a
so
mortgage.
that was one of the original ones when it first came out, that's
Because
what
they
happens
broke-
after a
exactly.
couple of years, and so now they're coming out with a higher grade and,
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's why, okay.
yeah, it's the same as like the old wiring, we've gotta do Romex instead of the cloth and varnish or the knob and tube.
No, because that thing in condo, right, not this one, in condo, the bank ask, they wanted to see,
Certain
not
neighborhoods.
this.
Not that one.
Not the one, of course, the other flex one,
Kinetic,
the
I
old
forgot-
one.
forgot how to
It's a
pronounce it.
couple of type of- it's a problem here.
Was the product.
And apparently it deteriorates or rusts from
It
the
ro- and-
inside out or outside in, I
Now
forgot.
they fall apart and they work.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a question that's maybe applicable to all three of you, is what common mistakes have you seen people make, or what do you wish investors knew when they start this process?
I'll answer first.
Mm-hmm.
Some people decide not to legalize, like a basement. So they legalize the upper 2 units and they don't legalize the basement because they don't want to underpin it. Because there's a big cost underpinning. And the risk in that is they get a knock on the door. And a zoning officer comes in and says, we got a complaint. They won't tell you from who, but we got a complaint, typically your tenants or your neighbors, and that this is not a legal apartment. Can we come in? We come in, and then basically you have to make it legal. And you've already renovated it, but you chose not to, so now you have to demolish the whole thing and then underpin. So that's a very expensive mistake. Another common mistake I find is people decide to renovate and not do a gut renovation. So that whole creation zone I was telling you about, you even have good experience with this. You try to, you know what, I'm just gonna do a cosmetic renovation. You start peeling back the wall, like in the kitchen, you're like, oh shoot, now I just realized that there's asbestos in this drywall, or it's lath and plaster. You gotta keep peeling back, and then before you know it, you're gutting the whole thing anyway. So their intention was not to, but they were hoping just to do a cosmetic renovation, and then end up realizing that they have to gut it anyway.
Good point.
So,
Another question, if there was say you purchased a bungalow and you wanted to make it a triplex and underpin and put a second story on, why would you go through all that work instead of doing a new build, or what's the pros and cons versus doing a new build, versus keeping the existing shell?
I can hit it, or you wanna?
Or both of you could hit that.
Yeah. Okay, so, what happens when you're building is, a lot of people leave 2 exterior walls, and usually it's the walls that are closest to the lot line, because you're only allowed to have so many windows there because of fire separation. And so, if you were to demolish and rebuild, you might have to step the house further away from the lot lines, okay, because these houses were grandfathered, and now you've gotta stay, what, like 1.5 meters or something, and so then your house is smaller, right? So they maintain those exterior walls, and also, if you rebuild the house from scratch, then there's additional taxes that you have to pay, okay? And so they leave a couple of exterior walls, demo everything else, and go up from there.
And would you be able to go through, get some kind of variances or go through the committee and keep the same existing footprint if going new?
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
Yeah,
again,
usually-
it's just, in addition to higher taxes, there's higher fees for community applications and things for new construction houses.
Yeah.
So it's just, everything kind of just gets more expensive.
Also, there is one issue, you have to be, this house has to be paid off, you cannot have a mortgage. The bank will not allow, if there is not a kitchen, bathroom is not
That's
a
a good
house,
point.
has to be
Yeah.
paid
You
off
understand that?
100%. You cannot have mortgage in this house.
So imagine you go to the bank and you say, I want a loan to demolish my house, okay, so you've got a 90%, 80% mortgage on it already, and then you take the house away, right? So, and then you don't pay your bills, for example, and all of a sudden, the bank wants to take the building back, or the lot back, right? But you paid 800,000 for it, now it's got no house, it's only worth 300,000, right? Do you think the bank's gonna let you take the house away?
Nope.
So you gotta do it with private money or something,
Yeah.
Pay off.
yeah. Or if you've got deep pockets. And if you do, then I wanna talk to you.
I do wanna continue answering your question from these guys' perspective. So is there a common mistake that you guys, come across, that an investor typically comes across?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I would say that Andre really stresses building a team, okay? And so everybody thinks that contractors, prices will go crazy or whatever, but there's certain people are really, really price focused, and you wanna have a contractor that's got a fair price, they can stick to a price and stuff, but it's not only price, and I would say try to get a contractor that's gonna be a team, right? And so I would say the strongest developers that I've come across, the strongest investors, are people that have a fantastic realtor, a fantastic architect, a fantastic builder, and they use the same people over and over, right? Does it really matter if your architect and your realtor and your contractor are eating well at the end of the night, if you also are? You know, and so build a great team. I've seen so many people go out and do investments and they do one and they stop and they can't do another one because they've lost friends during the way, right? You build a team and it's like, if you come across an issue, then you can be laughing over a coffee with your contractor or with your realtor as opposed to trying to strangle each other, you know? Don't think about the long term. Try and build that team. The most successful people out there are the people that have a great contractor, great architect, great realtor.
I think my 10 cents was kind of something Andre was just talking about, and something I learned personally was when I was doing my own projects, I tried to draw the line and do like renovate to here, and then like draw a line in the sand and stop here. And like when you're doing it, you're kind of doubting yourself, but you're paying for everything, so you're trying to kind of keep things under wraps. And then not only are you doubting it then, but then when you put the new stuff in, you just see it beside the old stuff that looked okay, and then it just looks terrible. And then, so I did that personally, where I drew the line here, and then it was just like, the total gut just made sense, but I was so reluctant to do that because I was paying for everything at first that, yeah, I kind of learned that lesson at least once.
Anything else? Well, we'll have, we'll send you guys an email with, maybe some slides and anything else that you guys would like to get, from this. I don't know if you guys wanna get in touch with them, I'll give you their contact info. We're an open book, we're here to share, we're here to educate. I know you guys couldn't sit, so I appreciate you guys sticking around and coming out. I hope you benefited from this, and I hope to be in touch with you guys. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you for Andre for letting us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yay.